Hey everybody, welcome to my 100 subscriber special. I really appreciate you guys. I'm a new channel, so even 100 subscribers is like huge. So thank you so much. This video will be divided into 3 sections. The first section, I'll be eating some crunchy food. The second section will be bubblegum blowing. And the third section will be a subscriber request, which was me eating while I read a story. So let's get started. I hope you can't hear any neighbor background noise. For some reason, they're pretty active at night. Get some ranch dip. Cut some sweet peppers. A couple baby carrots. Broccoli and cauliflower. And 2 little pieces of cheese. I got special gum too, some Hubba Bubba. I will not be using this often because it's full of sugar. But for this video, I will. And on rare occasions, I will. I can't remember if I mentioned this already, but I'll put timestamps below. My goodness. Timestamps below on when each section starts. This is really weird. This whole mixture in my mouth, all the flavors, it tastes like what a flower shop smells like. I know that probably doesn't make any sense. But like, you know how you can somehow taste what something smells like? I don't know, God. Okay. Like the jelly bean game. I can't even remember what it's called now. The one where you either get a yummy jelly bean or a gross one. Oh, Bean Boozled. Like, my sister and I both got skunk. And it tasted just like skunk smells. Obviously, I've never tasted skunk spray, but it tastes like what it smells like. It's weird. I was watching, is it Karen Eats or Eats with Karen? I can't remember exactly what the channel name's called, but she does a lot of live videos, I think. And she did a live one earlier where she was eating Applebee's nachos in her car. And they looked really, really good. And the chat was so funny. Suave Boom was in there. And he likes to play around and get some people going. And they obviously weren't familiar with him. Anyway, drip some dip. Anyway, and his joking ways, and they got a little offended. I couldn't tell if people were really legitimately annoyed that Karen couldn't keep up with the comments, or if they were just messing with her. I hope they weren't just messing with her, because the comment section moves so fast. There's just no way you could answer everybody. Cheese. Okay, guys. This section is over now. That would be a good thumbnail. Sorry if you heard that. I think it was my stomach. Like it comes up through my throat when I chew gum sometimes. I know that Power Ranger 1 and I think it was Power Ranger 1, right? I think there was another part to your username. I can't remember what it is, but I know you wanted big bubbles like that. That's weird. Ooh. Weird. Okay guys, time for the last section. My thumb's all weird. Whoop. The Tale of Peter Rabbit. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sand bank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. "Now, my dears," said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, "you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put into a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I am going out." Then old Miss Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. First, he ate some lettuce, and then some French beans, and then he ate some radishes. And then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. But round the end of a cucumber frame, who should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees, planting out young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages, and the other shoe among the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on all four legs and went faster, so that I think he might have gotten away altogether if he had not, unfortunately, run into a gooseberry net and got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows. They flew to him in great excitement and implored him to exert himself and try harder. Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve, which he intended to pop upon the top of Peter. But Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind him. He rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it had not so much water in it. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking underneath each one. Presently, Peter sneezed. "Kerchoo!" Mr. McGregor was after him in no time. He tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out of a window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter, so finally he went back to his work. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright, and he had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp from sitting in the water can. After a time, he began to wander about, going lippity-lippity, not very fast, and looking all around. He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to her family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently, he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his water cans. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scratch, scratch, scritch. Peter scuttered and underneath the bushes. But presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was towards Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter didn't care. He slipped under the gate and was safe at last in the wood outside the garden. Mr. McGregor hung up Peter's little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Peter never stopped running or looking behind him till he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice, soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. I'm sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made him some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it on a spoon. 1 tablespoon to be taken at bedtime. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, the 3 good little bunnies, had bread and milk and blackberries for supper.